Good morning, dear students. After a gap of 1 week, as I was in evaluation work, so I'm happy to meet you again. Today, let me go through the last part of this first chapter, quite a big chapter, that is concept of ecology or the ecosystem and environment. And in today's class, let me explain you about energy flow through an ecosystem, under which you'll be learning about food chains, food webs, energy pyramids, etc. You know that the energy begins with the sun in this universe, and that is through a process called photosynthesis. You have already learnt about the details of photosynthesis, which is simply represented in the form of an equation here, that is 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus sunlight and chlorophyll, that gives you C6H12O6, that is a carbohydrate, that is nothing but glucose, along with the liberation of 6 molecules of oxygen. So photosynthesis, it is a chemical reaction where green plants use water and carbon dioxide to store the sun's energy in glucose, and the energy is stored in glucose, and glucose is stored as starch in plants. So this is again a schematic representation of photosynthesis. Now, organisms that can make glucose during photosynthesis are called producers, the one which you already learnt even from your primary schools. Producers use cellular respiration to supply the energy they need to live, that is, which is represented in the form of an equation, that is 6O2 C6H12O6, that is glucose, will liberate 6 molecules of water along with 6 molecules of carbon dioxide plus energy in the form of ATP. So cellular respiration is the chemical reaction that releases the energy in glucose. The energy that is not used by producers can be passed on to organisms that cannot make their own energy. Organisms that cannot make their own energy are called consumers, the one which you know, and consumers that eat producers to get energy. They are the first order of consumers, which are also called herbivores or nothing but plant eaters. A consumer that eats another consumer for energy is called a secondary consumer or second order consumer. It may be a carnivore or an omnivore, maybe a predator, maybe a scavenger. So there are different types of consumers are seen here, particularly with reference to second order consumers. Most of the energy the secondary consumers gets from the primary consumer is used by the secondary consumer. Some of the energy is lost as heat, but some energy is stored and can pass on to another consumer. Dear students, let me make you one thing clear here, that in the previous class we have learnt about the laws of thermodynamics, under which you have learned that energy can neither be created nor be destroyed, which can be shifted or transferred from one trophic level to another trophic level. The same thing is happening here. A consumer that eats a consumer that already ate a consumer, it is called a third order or tertiary consumer. Maybe a carnivore or a omnivore. Again, it may be a predator or it may be a scavenger. Consumers that eat producers and other consumers are called omnivores. Omnivores eat both plants and animals. Consumers that hunt and kill other consumers are called predators. The animals that are hunted and killed are called prey. Consumers that eat other dead consumers are called scavengers, the one which you already learnt. The transfer of energy from the sun to producer to primary consumer, then to higher order consumers can be shown in a food chain. A diagrammatic representation is being shown in this slide. So the energy is being transferred from sun to green plants, that is during photosynthesis, and these plants are being eaten up by the grasshoppers. Grasshoppers are being eaten up by frogs, and frogs are being eaten up by vultures or hawks here. There might be another link in between frog and hawk, that could be a snake. So this is another food chain, and why I am showing you this slide is there is a considerable decrease in the amount of energy, as there is a transfer of energy from producers to the various levels of consumers. And as you've seen here, the producers will have the energy level of around 1000 units, and when it comes to primary consumers it will be very less, that is about 100 units of energy, and then when it comes to secondary consumers it is only 10 units of energy, and when it comes to top level consumer it is only 1 unit of energy. So there is a considerable decrease in the amount of energy that is being transferred from one trophic level to another trophic level. As you know that the energy will be lost in the form of heat. There are some other food chains that are shown here. In the first block, as you observe, lichens are being eaten up by slugs, slugs are being eaten up by frog, and frog is being eaten up by snake, that is green snake here. And the other food chain that is being represented here, it is with reference to a type of plant called thistle, that is being eaten up by garden snail. Then that garden snail is being eaten up by song thrush, that is a kind of sparrow, and then it is being eaten up by hawk, that is sparrowhawk. So it is clearly represented here that what is happening here during the transformation or the transition of energy from one trophic level to another trophic level. And there is another block which is being shown here, that is from blackberries. The energy is being transferred to bank wool, and then it is being transferred to stoat. So there are different types of food chains that are being represented here. And students, can you make out one difference here? In this last block you will find three levels, three trophic levels, and in the upper one, the middle one, you will see four trophic levels, and again four trophic levels are seen here. So in a given food chain, the number of trophic levels varies depending upon the type of organisms that are inhabiting in such an ecosystem. Now coming to the types of food chain continuation. The first type is grazing food chain. The consumers utilizing plants as their food constitute grazing food chain. This food chain begins from green plants, and the primary consumer is herbivore. Most of the ecosystem in nature follows this type of food chain. For example, grass to grasshopper, grasshopper to birds, and birds to falcon. So this is a pictorial representation of grazing food chain. So it starts from flower, that is producers, that is being consumed by caterpillar. Caterpillar is being consumed by frog. Frog is being consumed by snake, and snake is being consumed by owl, the last level of consumer here. Now coming to the second type of food chain, detritus food chain. Students, as you know that the term detritus refers to uh, the organisms which feeds on dead and decaying organisms. So this type of food chain starts from dead organic matter of both plants and animal bodies to the microorganisms, and then to detritus feeding organism, and then to other predators. The food chain depends here mainly on the influx of organic matter produced in another system. The organism of the food chain includes algae, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, insects, nematodes, etc. So here is the pictorial representation of that detritus food chain. As I said earlier, the energy is being transferred from sun to dead organic matter, and dead organic matter to bacteria, then to millipedes, some into aerobic respiration, and then that will be converted into inorganic matter. Now, coming to significance of food chain. The knowledge of food chain helps in understanding the feeding relationship as well as the interaction between organism and ecosystem. It also helps in understanding the mechanism of energy flow and circulation of matter in ecosystem. It also helps to understand the movement of toxic substances and the problem associated with biological magnification in the ecosystem. Now, coming to another small concept, what is food web? Food web can be defined as a network of several food chains which are interconnected at various trophic levels so as to form a number of feeding connections amongst different organisms of a biotic community. So the definition itself gives you a clear idea or picture about what actually this food web is. And here you can see a pictorial representation of a typical food web. A snake, a rat or a mice, a flower, and then a rabbit, and then a hawk. So there are different levels of food chain that are being interconnected here to represent a food web. Now, some important facts about food web. It consists of a node that represents an individual species or a group of related species or different stages of a single species. A link connects two nodes. Arrows represent links and always go from prey to predator. The lowest trophic levels are called basal species, while the highest trophic level are called top predators. And there will be the movement of nutrients which is in cyclic manner, but of the energy it is unidirectional and non-cyclic. That means to say, once the energy is being passed down from one trophic level to another one, the immediate next one, it cannot be come back. So that's why it is said to be unidirectional, and it is not cyclic one, but it is non-cyclic. Now coming to types of food web representations. As you see here, there are three levels of food web representation. One is topological webs. These food webs simply indicate a feeding relationship. And the second one, flow webs. Here, bioenergetic webs or flow webs include information on the strength of the feeding interaction. And third one, interaction web. Here, and in interaction, the arrows show how one group influences another one. Now coming to different food webs. Soil food web, aquatic food web, food web in forest, food web of grassland, food web in terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem. So these are some important types of food webs. Apart from this, there are many other food webs are also there. So now the soil food web, the first one, as you see here, again the energy starts from sunlight that will be passed on to green plants, and from green plants the energy is being passed on to fungi, some into nematodes, and sometime into the other kind of organisms. And plants gets the energy either from sun, sorry, both from sun as well as from organic matter of the soil, and that will be passed on to bacteria, and from bacteria it is to arthropods or to nematodes or to protozoans or to earthworms. So there is a very intricate network of connections are here to represent a typical food web. Students, I hope you understood what actually the food web means. So it is the interconnection of several types of food chains basically. So this is the representation of aquatic food web. Again, energy comes from sun, and that will be utilized by green plants or some phytoplanktons that are present in the water, and that is being consumed by sediment, consumed by various kinds of creatures like zooplankton, some by other such aquatic organisms. And then it will be after the death and decaying of these things, these zooplanktons and phytoplanktons, they undergo sedimentation, and that will be in the form of organic deposits, and from organic deposits it will be again shifted or transferred to next level of trophic organisms. So this will be the type of food web that is shown in the aquatic region, so hence called aquatic food web. Now, food web in forest, it's again yet another complicated type of food web. So as you see here, from green plant, that is producers, the energy is being passed on to rabbit or to goat, and from goat it is being transferred to jackal or it is being transferred to lion, and from rabbit it is being transferred to different kinds of organisms, sometimes into owl, sometimes into snake, sometimes into wildcat, and sometimes into other such living organisms. So this is yet another complicated type of food web. And again, in a grassland also you can see the complicated type of food web. From grass it is to grasshoppers, grasshopper to the frogs, or grasshoppers to lizards, or then finally to hawk. So likewise, in a typical food web, it will be an interconnection of several types of food chains. Now, food web in terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem, it is well represented in this slide. You see, there are different trophic levels: producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers, and quaternary consumers. And always the producers will be green plants which synthesize their food material through photosynthesis, or even in aquatic system you know that there are some aquatic plants and algae and even phytoplanktons that are there, and they are being consumed by small fishes or by some worms, or they are being consumed by snail, or they are being consumed by some insects, and then by the next trophic level, that is secondary consumer, which is represented here by rats, frogs, and fishes, that is big fishes. And the tertiary consumers are represented here through snakes, crane, duck, sparrow, and a quaternary consumer will be hawk or vulture or any other such kind of organisms. I hope you understood clearly what actually the food web is. So here you can see there is a very complicated nature of food web. There is interconnection of several types of food chains. Now, significance of food web. Food webs distinguish levels of producers and consumers by identifying and defining the importance of animal relationships and food sources, beginning with primary producers such as plants, then insects, and finally herbivores. Food webs are important tools in understanding that plants are the foundation of all ecosystems and food chains, sustaining life by means of providing nourishment and oxygen needed for survival and reproduction. The food web stability depends on the ecosystem. Now, coming to the another small concept, ecological pyramids. So, what are ecological pyramids? Students, this also you must have learnt in your PU classes, and a kind of higher version of the concept or the improved version of the concept which you are going to learn here. What are ecological pyramids? These are graphical representation of the trophic structure of an ecosystem, and the trophic levels are the feeding positions in a food chain, such as primary producers, herbivores, primary carnivores, etc. So on the right hand side of this, you see there will be producers, and herbivores are represented in the form of grasshoppers or insects or rats, rabbits, and the secondary consumers, that is primary carnivores, are being represented here by snake or by a lizard or by another such mammalian animal here, and then it is being eaten up by secondary carnivores, or it is said to be tertiary consumers. Now, coming to types of ecological pyramids, there are basically three types of ecological pyramids. They are pyramid of numbers, pyramid of biomass, and pyramid of productivity. Coming to the first type, pyramid of numbers, it is a graphic representation of number of individuals per unit area of various trophic levels. Large number of producers tend to form the base. Lower numbers of top carnivores occupy the tip. So as you observe here, the number of green plants, that is producers, is always more when compared to the number of primary consumers, that is mice here. So always there will be lesser number of mice, and then still lesser number of snakes, that is secondary consumers, and still less number of tertiary consumers, that is hawks. So this is a typical representation of pyramid of number, and here sometimes the number of this pyramid of number, it may be inverted, but mostly it is upright in position, but here it is inverted and as well as diamond shaped or spindle shaped here. So there will be producers, and those producers are being consumed by herbivores, and herbivores by parasites, and parasites by hyperparasites. So as you observe here, there will be only one tree, and that tree is being consumed by several birds called herbivores, and those herbivores are being eaten up by several types of parasites, and in turn those parasites are being consumed by hyperparasites. So in such a kind of parasitic kind of living organisms in an area or in an ecosystem, the pyramid of number is usually inverted. And here is a spindle shaped pyramid of number is seen, that is produces a single tree and several birds, herbivores, and only one carnivore is represented or shown here, that is carnivore. Now some important aspects of pyramid of number, advantages as well as disadvantages. The first advantage will be it's a simple method of giving an overview, and the second one is good for comparing changes to the ecosystem at different times. And disadvantages, the number of specific species may be too great to measure accurately, and it does not take into account about juveniles or immature forms. Only the matured forms are being considered generally. and all organisms are included regardless of the size. So here size is the not matter, and it's a number which only matters here. Now, pyramid of biomass. It is a graphical representation of biomass present per unit area at different trophic levels, with producers at the base and carnivores at the top. So you know that biomass is calculated as mass of each individual multiplied by number of individuals at trophic levels. And here this pyramid of biomass is being shown here in a pictorial representation. In the first one, that is on the left hand side, it is an upright pyramid of biomass in a terrestrial ecosystem where the biomass of producers is about 10,000 kgs, and that of herbivores it is 100 kgs, and that of primary carnivores it is 10 kgs only, and top carnivore only 1 kg. It doesn't mean that the lion or tiger is weighing only 1 kg. This is in terms of the biomass that is being shown or represented here. However, on the right hand side you see there is an inverted pyramid of biomass which is being shown in an aquatic ecosystem where producers will have a very low biomass of only 4 grams, and that of herbivores, that is including small fishes, that will be about 8 grams per meter square, and carnivores will have a weight of or biomass of about 12 grams per meter square. So you can see both upward or upward and inverted type of pyramids with reference to biomass. Now, pyramid of productivity. Pyramid of productivity is a graphical representation of the flow of energy through each trophic level of a food chain over a fixed time period. And here the input of solar energy may be indicated by adding an extra to the base. Students, you must have learned only pyramid of biomass, pyramid of energy, and pyramid of uh, other such things. And here new concept, pyramid of productivity. So in terms of pyramid of productivity, as you see here, the primary producers will have a productivity of around 10,000 joules, and primary consumers will have a productivity of only 1000 joules, that is in terms of energy that they produce, and secondary consumers will produce only 100 joules, and tertiary consumers will produce only 10 joules. However, at the base, as you see here, the main source for this all types of living organisms will be sunlight, and that sunlight on an average it is around 1 lakh, 1000 lakh joules of sunlight. Now, energy pyramids show amount of available energy decreases for higher consumers, and amount of available energy decreases down the food chain. It takes a large number of producers to support a small number of primary consumers. It takes a large number of primary consumers to support a small number of secondary consumers. So that is what is being shown in the left hand side of this slide. Now, the last part of this energy pyramid, that is pyramid of energy, and here as you see it is an upright pyramid where producers are at the base or the bottom, and then comes the first order consumers, that is herbivores, then comes the second order consumers, that is carnivores, and finally third order consumer here, okay, which are referred to as the uh, what you call predators. So as you see here in this slide, as we go up from producers to next level of organisms or the trophic levels, there is a considerable decrease in the amount of energy, or what we call it as energy loss is seen. You know very well that this loss could be due to the heat that is being released either due to respiration or due to any other physiological processes. So, with this, let me stop at this level, and uh, I am happy to announce you that I have completed first chapter, that is concept of ecology and environment. So in the next class, let me start with a new chapter, what is known as animal relationships, under which you will learn the various types of relationships that are existing in animals. So thank you students. Have a nice day.